Is everyone ready? Good evening and welcome to the Monday, December 11th, Maplewood City Council Manager Workshop. City Manager Coleman, would you please do our roll call?
Certainly. Councilmember Villavicencio? Here. Councilmember Lee?
Present.
Councilmember Kay?
Here.
Councilmember Junum?
Here.
Mayor Abrams?
I'm here as well. Thank you. Council members, is there a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved. Second.
By Cave, seconded by Lee, the motion to approve the agenda. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. We have no unfinished business tonight. We have two new business items to discuss tonight. The first one is the Development Code Amendments discussion. And this really is a sequel to our previous discussions. And Mr. Martin, this is your topic. I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. And in somewhat of a prequel action too, as this item is on your regular agenda for consideration of adoption. But what we want to focus on during the workshop is we have our consultant, Rita Trapp from HKGI present. And Rita's going to walk through the work that staff, namely Elizabeth Hammonds and other planning staff, our Planning Commission and the City Council has done over the last 18, 20 months at looking at our development code, namely the zoning code, and looking at updates that are needed to make sure that it's still relevant and that we're reacting to current development needs. So I do want to emphasize that nothing that you're being presented or asked to adopt tonight is new. Both the Planning Commission and the Council have seen this multiple times, and it's just kind of a wrap-up opportunity. And we want to especially take advantage with Rita's presence here at the workshop to get through the nuts and bolts of what we're looking at within the ordinance amendments so that you're ready for consideration of adoption later this evening. So again, thank you to the Planning Commission and the Council for providing that input and guidance that has gotten us here tonight. And with that, I'll hand it to Ms. Trapp to take it away from here.
Hello and welcome.
Yes, nice to see you all again. Again, I'm Rita Trapp with HKGI. And I'm just going to go through brief slides. I think they were included, so hopefully they'll be familiar. But we wanted to give a chance to remind you and others. You could hear me anyway? Pretty loud.
We just want to, yeah, this will be louder.
I know.
Go right ahead.
Do you want me to keep going or wait?
Yes, no, go ahead.
He has a microphone.
Oh.
No, it's okay. All right. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Are we good?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. So back to where we were. I appreciate the opportunity. We wanted to provide an overview of what we've been working on with yourselves, the Community Design Review Board and the Planning Commission. As you know, this has been a multi-year process. We've been working with you on updating our regulations about uses, about the R3 district themselves, the mixed-use district, parking and signage, and nonconformities has been the focus. Do I have the presentation? Awesome. Okay. Not that I really need it, but I do kind of like to refer to it. And I'd rather not see myself. That was part of it, too. Let's be honest. Awesome. Thank you. So in your packet this evening, for your regular agenda, there are four different ordinances that we've prepared. It's a little bit, the reason we did that is otherwise they're very, very long, and so it felt easier for all of us, including ourselves, to create four separate ordinances that focused on different areas of the code. And I'll be walking through those in a little bit of detail. I'm going to try not to dive too far in, but there are four sections. One is in Chapter 12, and then the rest are in Chapter 44, zoning. The Chapter 12 one really came about because as we were updating Chapter 44, we realized that there were basically design standards that were located within the zoning code, and they're about metal storage buildings. And since metal storage buildings aren't really a use, they're an aesthetic, we're putting all of the standards in the same location. So the areas identified in red are basically moving from zoning to this section, and everything will be together. That's really the basis of the Chapter 12 update. So not much to that, and we really didn't make any changes to it, other than a slight wording change to clarify about a conditional use permit. Chapter 44, Article 1, we did a little bit more of an update to this. Originally, we started focusing on the definitions because we were making changes to the use table. We also focused on reviewing specifically off-street parking, and there was a specific desire to update the minimum parking requirements, or at least review them and make sure that they were making sense. And we did make some updates to those. Not a lot, just a few areas that there were updates. Looking at consistency of the parking standards among the districts, sometimes what happens is we got some standards in one district but not in another, so consolidating them all together helped to make sure that those were accurate. And then addressing some areas that you referenced but didn't put as much teeth into, like shared parking facilities, off-street parking requirements that they have to be on the same ownership, those types of elements. That led us at one point to identify the fact that nonconformities section needed some review. That was not originally part of our scope, but it got added because as we were making changes to other sections, we started to touch that section and realized there were some confusing parts of it. And so we made some recommendations on changes. And those in particular were reviewed by the city attorney because nonconformities is a state statute covered area, so we wanted to make sure that we were in conformance with state rules with regards to nonconformities. Article 2 probably saw the most change in the fact that we consolidated all of the uses into tables, and that made it easier because right now your code was a lot longer. Hopefully we've made it slightly shorter because now all of the uses are not repeated for every district. They're listed once, and hopefully that helped us clean up, eliminate inconsistencies, address making sure that if you have to follow a use standard that you know what it is, and also clean up use standards. For example, if you have a specific use and you have to meet certain criteria, sometimes they were slightly different between districts, so we made sure those were consistent as they were appropriate, and those all got moved to the same section. So now your code has a permitted with standards, which means that if you meet the standards, you are permitted and you don't need further review by the Planning Commission and the Council. The CUP like you've had it before. And then blank is a prohibited use, and it specifically says that in your code, that if you're not listed or it is blank, you're not allowed. So any change would require specific action. We also identified when we made those changes that there were a number of districts that did not have purpose statements, and those are pretty helpful when someone wants to rezone to understand what the intent of a specific district are, so we added those. We reviewed the R3 district with staff and the Planning Commission. In the end, it wasn't felt like there was a lot of change needed to that district. We did try and make it a little easier to follow and did clarify what green space means by adding a definition because it wasn't really. Otherwise, R3 pretty much stayed the same. It was felt like that was working for the community. And I know we had a discussion with you about building height related to R3 and mixed use, and that was, again, felt like we should keep how things were. You have a CUP process if you need to go higher. Mixed use was reviewed, the diagrams were added, design standards were just reorganized. Again, it was felt after we reviewed it that generally it's working pretty well. We did compare it against the North End district to make sure where there was differences, those were intentional differences because those are different districts, but where it makes sense that they should be similar, that we have similar standards. And then as I referenced, use-specific standards were consolidated into one area. So if you are a particular use, a gas station, you go to one area and you find out what kind of standards you need to meet. Signage did have a major overhaul in part to meet federal case law, which says that you no longer can use content for regulating a sign. I think we've talked about that before. If you need to read the sign to figure out what kind of a sign you have, you can't do that. So we have updated them. We reorganized to put permanent, temporary signs together. There's a new ground banner sign, which we had a conversation with you about last time. I think one of the conversations that came out of that discussion was about driveways and clarity about sightlines with driveways. And we didn't just affect the ground banner signs in general. We added a little bit to clarify that you need to have good visibility at driveways with any type of signage. So that was a nice outcome of our workshop with you last June. So we did address that. There was one element that was identified with dynamic displays and then window signs. Staff, as they dug into it, figured out that window signs are a little bit confusing. So I think since June, we've worked with the Planning Commission to clarify about what window signs are, where they should be allowed. So the signs up here are just to illustrate the first two signs. All three signs would be allowed in the mixed-use district in the North End district. That was a discussion that we had. This is kind of what you had before, but it was a little unclear. So that got clarified. We made actually a specific sign limit size provision for the neon sign. You know, the idea is that an open sign is fine, but we really don't want to have an open sign, a really big 5 feet wide sign, so we have some limits to that. So that was one thing that has happened since we saw you last time. But staff identified and Planning Commission worked through it with us in a couple of meetings to try and really make sure it made sense. Murals, as you know, last time we talked, totally new because murals now kind of aren't really signs, but they're not signs. So we needed to find a place for them to be because you have to look at the mural to decide if it's appropriate or not appropriate. So it has its own section and there are some regulations. The biggest thing is that the Planning Commission was very adamant that it should only be allowed for non-residential uses, that we shouldn't have it in their in residential districts. They felt that was really important. We've asked them a couple of times about that conversation. And that we have limits on what they can contain so that we don't have moving parts or things that are bothersome. So that is a new section of your code. You referenced murals in the past, but it was very light. And now with the content neutral regulations, we can't be quite so light anymore. We need to be a little bit more specific. So I had noted, I think in the packet, some follow-ups. Again, we clarified the sight lines for intersections and freestanding sign placement to make sure there weren't obstructions. Illumination was reviewed to verify standards for outdoor lighting and the mixed use, so that was something specific relative to window signs and just illumination in general was a topic of discussion with the Planning Commission. I know when we met with you last, you were wondering about how signage would be rolled out, how would we inform folks of the change, and staff has talked about it. The recommendation is that we'd have the information on the website, and the best people to talk to are the contractors because signs need to be, a permit needs to be received with a sign contractor, so they're the ones that are most knowledgeable, and so those are who the city is proposing to have that first conversation with, to let them know that the rules have changed, here are the new rules, and here are the questions. You've made some changes. In general, sizes and things are similar, so hopefully it won't be too dramatic of a change, but now we're in concert with what federal law allows, and we've cleaned up some areas that I know staff has spent time with contractors trying to explain, so we tried to address those, so hopefully it'll be easier, not harder, after this new regulation is put into place. Planning Commission, as you know, held multiple work sessions over multiple years. They did have a public hearing in October, and there weren't any members of the public present. There was no comments. But we did still have conversation and talk about certain areas, and they recommended approval of the amendments with not any specific changes. They asked us to look at one element, which we did revisit, but it seemed like it was meeting what their intent was, so we actually didn't make a change. But we did revisit what they asked us about. So generally, it's been favorably received, and it did have the Community Design Review Board. They reviewed it in between your review and the public hearing, and they, again, made some comments. We talked about those with the Planning Commission and addressed those elements that the Planning Commission and staff felt were appropriate. So they've also been involved in the process. So later this evening, there are 4 separate ordinances that are in your packet for review and adoption. And then, as you all know, whenever you adopt an ordinance, you have to have a summary resolution that allows for summary publication. So there is one resolution that covers all of those ordinances for you to adopt as well. But with that, I can answer any questions. We can dive more in on anything specific. I tried to stay high level, but maybe there was a topic of particular interest to you that we can talk a little bit more about.
Thank you for that presentation. I want to thank our staff. I want to thank our Planning Commission, Design Review, and anyone else who participated in this. It is really important, and it's tedious work to go back and make sure that we are updating things as laws change and times change and circumstances change. This is important to do. It is not an easy undertaking, and I recalled thinking that back in June when you were here for a workshop and we went through some of this. So thank you all for everything that you put into this. It really helps, I think, going on into the future. Council members, do you have any questions? Councilmember Lee was first.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a comment, actually. So being a part of the liaison to the Planning Commission, just wanted to say they definitely have great conversations at the Planning Commission meeting. They have great questions, and I think they were very thoughtful in their recommendations. So thank you for all the hard work.
Councilmember Cave.
And I just have a comment to agree with what the mayor said. All the groups that have been together and put this together, it's not a process that just took a couple months. It's been a long time. But to simplify things for our staff is, that's a great tool to have that happen. And thanks for all your work.
It's always a pleasure to work with you and your staff and the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. We don't have any other questions.
No other questions?
No.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Council members, next we have Metro Transit Purple Line roadway and transit design options. And who is going to kick this one off? Mr. Love.
Test.
Mayor and Council, good evening. As you mentioned, we're joined here by the Purple Line Project team. Tonight, they are going to provide a presentation to update you on the progress of the study of White Bear Avenue as an alternative route. They will be presenting some conceptual layouts of the most promising design. They're here to answer questions and also gather feedback from the City Council. So I will turn it over to the Purple Line team to introduce themselves and begin their presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. We are appreciating the time you're giving us this evening to kind of orient you, allow you to ask any questions, become familiar with what we're talking about on White Bear Avenue. And if there's time, we have a few slides we want to give you an update on what we refer to as Segment 5, which is essentially Beam Avenue. That's lagging a little bit further because we've had to have some pretty deliberate conversations with the mHealth Fairview and St. John's Hospital to better understand what their needs are and find a solution right for them. So, but we do have an update on that if we have time, but we wanted to focus mostly on Larpenteur to the north to Beam Avenue.
Can I ask you please to introduce yourself?
Yes.
And anyone else who's going to be speaking as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Craig Lamoth, Purple Line Project Manager. We've got a few of our team members here tonight. We got Stephen Smith, our Deputy Project Manager. We got Sarah Flum, our Design and Engineering Manager, who will be leading the conversation tonight. We also have Colin Owens, our Outreach and Engagement staff person on the project, and Allison Luongo as well. And what else do I got? We've got Justin as well from our consultant team supporting our discussion tonight. We're hoping to use this opportunity to have you ask as many questions as you have about what you see here tonight, because we'd really like, we're not doing any heavy public engagement on these layouts that you're seeing until closer to springtime. I know we're just getting into winter, so it's hard to think about spring, but that's about the time that we'll be doing that. We're not going to be getting to any decision on what you're seeing on the layouts until mid-spring to late spring timeframe. We're hoping to go from what you see tonight as our short list of items down to a single concept for White Bear Avenue, and that would be really mid to late spring timeframe. And that concept would then be used to go and compare back to the Bruce Vento Trail concept that we haven't been doing any work on since we've changed directions to look at this new corridor. And then there'd be a whole nother round of engagement on Bruce Vento versus the preferred concept for White Bear in the summer timeframe before a decision is made, hopefully a little after Labor Day of next year on where Purple Line wants to be. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to our team. We're going to have roll plots here that we'd like for you to be able to come down and gather around the table and look at. We have really two options, and Sarah will talk about those, and then we have some reference material that'll be up on the slide, like the legends, so like what are the green colors and what are the pink colors that you're going to see on the roll plots mean. In addition, I believe we're going to have the ability to zoom in if there's an area interest, an intersection that you want to see greater detail than what you see on the roll plots. We'll have that ability to zoom in as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. So what we're gonna go through first is kind of the basics of the design. We have a couple, we have a couple different options in each kind of segment of White Bear Avenue. And in the handouts, we have the legend so that If you ever need to refer back to it, you can. There's a side running option for the transit and a center running option. And we have some visualizations to show, and then we can kind of get a little bit more into the details. We've been working a lot with staff to try to make sure that that our designs will work for everybody. And just remember, it's a very iterative process for design. So, you know, things like turn lanes and some of those have not been fully designed yet. We have turn lanes where we think we're going to need turn lanes, but we needed to come up with a design in order to run traffic modeling, in order to come up with like turn lane lengths and different things. So don't be alarmed if you see a turn lane length that is shorter than it appears today, because we will be updating and revising continuously before we take all of this out for public engagement in a few months. So side running, what we mean when we say this is the transit runs on the outside lanes, and this is just kind of a good general layout of side running or cross section. In Maplewood, all of our side running options have a median in the center of White Bear Avenue, and this is just generally for safety. When you take this roadway from 4 lanes down to essentially 2 lanes for general traffic, there's going to be a lot more traffic in the lanes, and so trying to shoot the gap and make a left turn is tougher. So so that will only be allowed at intersections and at signals. It still allows right turn access in and out. There's some narrower segments in St. Paul where we can't fit a median in. So so we have 2 different cross sections for the side running. Center running is what it sounds like. It is transit only lanes in the center of the roadway. And that can be either a median separating the 2 directions of traffic, or medians on each side of the transit lanes where there's space to actually do that. That really provides more of a separated guideway, which is more similar to what we had in the Bruce Vento Trail corridor. When we have center running, we don't have a lot of examples of it in the Twin Cities yet. Gold Line is building some center running guideway, so you'll see it in a year or 2. But so far, like, it will most closely look like University Avenue with light rail, how that is barrier separated. And it would be, the guideway itself would only be used by transit and emergency vehicles. So there's those 2. So we've been meeting with staff, with Maplewood staff, St. Paul staff, for the last few months, kind of going over all of this. And some of the key things to think about, we are maintaining left turns at the signals where they are today. That is kind of our baseline assumption that we'll need to do that. For the center running option, unsignalized intersections, we say that's closed. What that means is unsignalized intersections become right in, right out. The median goes through the unsignalized intersections, because when you have a center running guideway, the bus gets full priority and doesn't stop. So it's not safe for bus rapid transit to have to deal with cross traffic without a signal. So, so in center running, you'll see that some of the unsignalized intersections are right in, right out only. We have split platform design, which means that the platforms are, for the most part, I think at the far side of the intersections. That's better for transit operations. If the bus can get through the light and then stop at a platform, that it tends to be a lot faster for the bus. So you'll see that in our design. We do need to meet with emergency services. We have a lot more conversations about maintenance to have over the next couple months. We have not done all of that yet. We will be, you know, we've worked with emergency services on other projects, so in general, we've taken that into consideration in our design, but we'll have to show this and work out any issues that they may have. And what remains on the corridor, it still is remarkably similar to what it is today. The width of the roadway is about the same. The traffic operations will be similar to what they are today. We've done a lot of work, especially with the Highway 36 interchange, trying to figure out how to get enough lanes through there to make everything work. And we'll see more when we go through the roll plots, but there are, in Maplewood, there's already quite a few sections of White Bear Ave that have median, and then those few that don't right now will, in either of our designs that we have. Some of the intersections are modified a little bit for safety and because when you're turning from the side streets into a one-lane in each direction roadway, there might be things like some of the free rights and stuff may go away, but and our scope right now assumes a full reconstruction of White Bear Ave, and that also will be a somewhat iterative process to figure out what qualifies for the federal funding and what doesn't. So I think, we have some visualizations. You'll probably recognize this is White Bear Avenue at County Road C. This is the existing condition. Right now it is 4 lanes of traffic with a 2-way left turn lane in the middle. And you can see County Road C is up towards the top. And you can see Bachman's and all of the other businesses. So with side running, this is, generally what it would look like. And this is even the first time. The visualizations are brand new. We just got them last week. So this, in general, is what side running would look like. We're showing red lanes because red is the color of a transit lane. Not to say that the lanes will be totally red. They may just be red at intersections or in certain spots that are more likely to have drivers be confused about which lane they're supposed to be in. So. And, go ahead.
I have a question. If you go back to the last screen, I'm just a little confused. The red lines, let's say, even though they aren't going to be red, are cars going to be able to drive in that lane also?
They will only be able to turn right. So they will be right turn lane and transit only.
I don't know how they're going to follow that. I think that would be tough.
Yeah, we're looking at how, there's several bus rapid transit lines around the country that have red lanes like this, and we're looking at what they do. There's a mix of the red paint that, that people use to keep regular traffic out. There are red lanes in Minneapolis right now that Metro Transit is using on the arterial BRT lines, on the B line, and I think on the E line. And in general, in Minnesota, we have pretty good compliance with the red pavement, but there are transit systems around the country that are looking at like camera enforcement and other things if they have trouble with the enforcement. We're still working out with the design. We could do things like potentially put the lanes for the buses, up an inch higher or something than the lanes next to them, just to kind of make it uncomfortable for drivers to go back and forth without, But in general, traffic will move slower in the whole corridor. The maximum speed in the corridor is going to be 35 miles an hour with this.
But there's no left turn for the businesses on the other side, like,
No. And in a lot of cases, there's already a median there. There's not a
Yes.
left turn. There's some gaps that we're going to fill in with median, but yeah.
In terms of having one lane higher or lower than another, wouldn't that create problems for snow plowing?
Yeah. That's it's just an example of things
Okay.
that people do around the country. We haven't decided exactly how we're going to do it yet, but that is one of the things that'll be very important is designing this in a way that keeps general traffic from driving in it, in the bus lanes.
Sure. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a comment. I drive to Minneapolis often, and there's a red lane in Minneapolis, and it is very confusing about turning right. And so, if that's the route you guys are going to go down, I think it's going to take a lot more than just a sign or something like that to make sure people are understanding that turn, where that cycle begins. And if there's going to be enforcement, I think there's going to be more education around where does that start. So clarifying that piece would be very helpful, because in Minneapolis, it is very confusing.
I think they allow parking in the bus lane a little bit too in off-peak time, so that is a little more confusing than what we'll be doing. And then this is an example of center running. This is showing median in the center of the roadway. But the red lanes in this case are transit only. And then you can see at the intersection of County Road C and White Bear Ave, there's turn lanes. And the traffic signals will be phased so that the turning vehicles don't conflict with the buses. And I think this might be it for the slides, if we want to get into the roll plots now.
Yeah, we can go back up to the legend.
Oh, yeah,
Invite down.
sure. If people want to come down and look at the roll plots, you can. We'll have them on the screen too.
So the way we've got these set up, I think it helps to come down and take a look. We've got both options laid out next to each other, so you can look back and forth to see how the roadway changes between the options.
Okay, council members?
Okay, all right. Okay, so this is Larpenter and White Bear Ave in the side running. And then, oh no, that's center running. And then this one would be side running. We have tried to kind of show on the side running where we think we could put the red pavement to have a little bit less confusion. Center running, we're just in general showing everything is red, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we would have red pavement for the entire extent. So we'd have to, that's all things that will be engineered. So you will notice probably right away in both scenarios, there's going to be a median at North St. Paul Road, and the signal is removed. And it becomes right in, right out only. We do still have, space for turn lanes in and out of North St. Paul Road. Signal is at Ripley. Do you have questions?
Yes, how would somebody going this direction get to this business here? Like, that's like a event center or anything?
They would turn on Ripley and come down.
Okay, so they can no longer cross over.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We've had several discussions in this area too as well, and just pointing out as we're looking at this that there's the intention to design all of these, both the stoplights and the intersections, with the just understanding there's going to be more U-turns as well along the corridor. So
And
that is.
that's kind of a question too, because the more U-turns you have, the more slow traffic, because some cars can U-turn and some can't very well. And then it's like, and people are going to be honking, get going to get through the light, and people are trying to U-turn.
And the U-turns will only be at lights. So so it would be typically where you have that left arrow that you will be able to do the U-turns.
Just in addition to that, my assumption is that would you make the end piece here, if it's more available for U-turn, would you make that wider to allow for more U-turn, or, is there any design concepts around that at all, if that's going to be kind of the concept that we're going to go with?
So a U-turn in general is like any car should be able to do a U-turn at, it's a 4-lane road essentially. There's still lanes here, so if they encroach into the transit lane to make that U-turn, they would be doing it when they have the light, so they're not going to be getting in the way of the bus at all, or be in conflict with the bus. So so they should be able to, so typically cars and small trucks should be able to make that U-turn. Larger trucks would have to kind of route around in the
And which one is
roadway system.
better for the U-turn? Having a center buses or having the buses on the outside? Does it matter?
I think it,
Either one?
yeah, either one is about the same, yeah. This is, the design in general of White Bear Ave is intended to be better for pedestrians. Typically, these medians at the intersections are wide enough for like a pedestrian refuge is what we call it. Yeah, it functions a little bit better for the pedestrians than.
If you do the center one, it feels a little bit like Frogger.
Okay.
I prefer the side.
We're not having public comment. This is a workshop, so we have to kind of stick with the council and with the Met Council staff. Is there anything else that we need to know about this?
There's also sidewalk gaps here too as well, so you'll see that we're kind of designating some areas where there's not sidewalk today, I think. Sorry. I think Maplewood is about 70% sidewalk. So there's going to be opportunity within this project where we can fill some of those sidewalk gaps. And so we kind of identify where those gaps are on these layouts too as well. So just kind of making sure that we have more greater accessibility to the platforms too as well. So we're able to kind of accomplish that through our project with those sidewalk gaps.
Thank you. I think filling in those sidewalk gaps is going to be really important. Where are we looking at stations along here, just on this section that you're showing us?
So, the stations, they kind of start a little bit south of Maplewood at Idaho and White Bear Ave, and then there will be a station at Frost and a station at County Road B. And then as we move down, we'll see the others, but it's roughly every half mile has a station.
Okay. And there will be a station on either side of White Bear Avenue?
So
Yeah.
yellow rectangles are the platforms.
Yep,
Okay,
the
got
yellow
it. Okay.
rectangles, yep. And Ripley, the existing signal at Ripley is not warranted. But we think, and we're running the traffic to find out, we think that with closing the North St. Paul intersection to right in, right out, and then with event traffic from Aldrich Arena, that will still be warranted. So we're keeping that signal. Frost. We have it signalized plus their stations. County Road B, similar, signalized plus their stations. There's left turn lanes like there are today.
In the side running condition versus. Thank you again. The side running condition versus the center running condition related to transit operations, the center running is going to be a little bit faster, obviously, based on just kind of has its own separated roadway to run on versus the side running. When you think about the accesses, the deliveries, things like that, that can occur within the side running condition, it's just, it lends itself to be a little bit better and from a transit operations for a center running. So what I want to say is that as we go through the evaluation, each one's going to have pros and cons that's going to be associated to it.
Okay.
The transition, which? From having the center median to the two outside medians. This also, I mean, it's the outside medians are kind of a better designation and kind of separation for transit in general. So where we have the space to put the medians on the outside in the center running, we are doing it. There are some segments where we can't fit it. Like we're not gonna go into the Ramsey County Poor Farm Cemetery, things like that. But we are trying to fit it in where we can.
And so Met Council, like from an operational perspective, sorry, we're going to forget this the whole time. Remember? So from an operational perspective, Met Council really likes the center option. It's much less conflict and it's faster, particularly if you get into the areas where it's truly separated. For it, it's great transit time. It shows up really, really well in those like runtime calculations and things like that that are very important to just the system's viability for it. But it also has the trade-off of usually less access on the side for it. It's even more closures a little bit and stuff like that by a little bit. So like Sarah was saying earlier, pros and cons, or Stephen said that earlier. Sorry, pros and cons to each. So.
So then this starts at County Road B, and then continues, still center running here, side running here. We worked really hard to be able to get 2 through lanes underneath the 36 bridge, just to kind of keep traffic flowing and provide enough storage length for the turns on 236. But we'll continue to work with MnDOT on how all of that works.
Just a quick question, does that, I mean, thinking about it, it seems very tight under 36. Is that reconstruction of a portion of the bridge, or?
We don't,
So
we'll still work through that. We don't think that we have to reconstruct any part of the bridge right now, although the bridge is kind of older and MnDOT might want to reconstruct it. We think that we can do it with reconstructing some of the barrier of the bridge. Kind of the design that's there right now is older with the guardrail. That's wider than it necessarily needs to be if you put in a different type of barrier. So we think we can get that space just by changing out the barrier.
And then if you look in the corner here, we actually have a section of right under 36. So this is basically cut right through there. So you can see right now we have 2 foot lanes, or I'm sorry, 2 normal lanes and then a 7-foot shoulder through here for it. And what the intention is to basically put up a concrete. It's called a continuous. Basically nothing that you can snag on, but it's much smaller than the guardrail and space that are out there today for it, which brings us up to 39 feet. So we could pretty comfortably get 3 lanes through there. It's the three totally standard lane widths plus about 4 feet of excess, I guess, for it, and not. The outside conditions is the one we care about a lot more due to snow storage and some other things for it, and that's the one that we're able to pretty much maintain.
It's probably
on
more
the
like
outside.
the barrier that you see on 36 at 61.
It's a much more standard way to do
Yeah.
it now. Yeah, any newer barrier would look like this rather than what is in there today.
Yeah.
That should impact the sidewalks under the bridge.
Sidewalks
The
would not be
sidewalks
touched
will
at all.
still, yeah,
So-
be
So the
same.
outside curbs completely will be staying in place as well as the guardrail thing. And then this is that spot where the sidewalks kind of go up and over the slope paving in that configuration. So those will be identical, untouched, I guess.
And so let's see, there were stations at County Road B. The next spot for stations would be at 11th and Jarvis. There's just not really space or a good place for stations kind of in that MnDOT right away, nor are there, destinations that are easy to walk to really in there. So 11th and Jarvis for the Hy-Vee and all the other like kind of big box businesses. Yeah. Yeah. So there is today a 64 that comes up 11th that'll turn into the guideway here, and they'll stop at stations, the same stations that the Purple Line will stop at. Yeah, I know there's some concerns with traffic on some of the side streets, turning into some of the businesses with existing backups. That has been brought to our attention by Maplewood staff, and we'll look at that as we're doing the traffic analysis and see what we can do there. The next station would be a County Road C. And we know there's some senior housing going in and some other things, so yeah, it seems like could be a good location.
This is the area we have the visualization.
Oh, yeah,
Do we want to
okay.
go back to those at all? I
So-
actually lost the other proposed one, so we could.
So, yeah, this might be a good place to look at these visualizations. My County Road C.
Center and side running proposed.
Yeah.
Some of the big differences here too as well, and I think Sarah pointed out earlier, was just when you look at the side running condition where you have unsignalized intersections versus when you're center running, that intersection now becomes really closed off in the center running condition. So we can't allow cars to cross that guideway. So these are going to be some of the things as we go through and document. One of the things we didn't want to do is come to you after the evaluation's done and overwhelm you with a lot of information, allowing you to be able to kind of see it for the first time. And maybe it triggers some questions for you to provide to us later on. It doesn't have to just be here. There might be some questions that you think of after seeing this that maybe it triggers a thought for us too as well. So when we come back in front of you, this is a question you may have for us so we can try to address it. But one of the things that we're going to end up doing is going out for the big public engagement push and making sure that we are getting enough public feedback on these options too as well. So they are different in nature when you're looking at center running and side running, and there's a lot of different things to consider. And so right now we're going through all that evaluation, the traffic evaluation, the ridership evaluation, safety, pedestrian safety. We're gathering up all that information to kind of complete a story. So when we go out, we can give all the information to everyone.
And we will be going out specifically to the businesses whose accesses become right-in, right-out only, and talking to them. We're still kind of trying to wrap our heads around, what all the impacts could be. But I think we're planning to do that early next year.
Yeah, so we haven't been focusing much on property impacts. None of our options are without property impacts of some kind. It's just a function of how big are the property impacts. And so a lot of it that will help us finalize that and understand that is what Stephen, I think, mentioned earlier. We've got a traffic analysis underway. We've worked real closely with your staff where they think like left turn lanes need to be, but we need to figure out how long does that left turn lane need to be based off the traffic study. And the longer the left turn lane, potentially the more property impacts because we're widening out the roadway to accommodate all that. So we don't have that information at this point, but we would before we'd ever go out to the public. Before we go out to the public, besides the property owners that we are reducing access, if there's any substantial property impacts, we would want to go meet with those property owners before going out to the general public and having open houses and things like that. I think like one of the scenarios, probably on the previous sheets, the Starbucks that's not too far from here, the center running option definitely encroaches upon that property.
Yes.
Is there any other questions that the council has before we go back to our seats? And then we can ask some more.
You may want to look a little bit more at just getting towards Beam is where there may be some changes, like here at Coleman, like was pointed out, if it's center running, that intersection becomes right in, right out only. This Hazelwood Professional Center right now, I think there's an opening in the barrier to turn in, that would become right in, right out only. I think Mesabi, I think already is right in, right out. Yeah. Raditz is fully open right now, but in the center running, it would be closed, and even, I think, inside running, we're kind of looking at whether it should be a 3/4 intersection, so you could potentially make left turns in, but not make left turns out, just because of how close that's getting to the signal and with traffic and backing up, and we'll figure that out kind of with the traffic analysis. And then, we were planning to have a station at Beam, but with the existing driveways and things and not wanting to take businesses, it's starting to look like the stations will be closer to Raditz. Yeah, this is one of those places where there's new sidewalk, right? I can't read upside down, but.
I think that community actually would like it if it was closed off because it's a cut-through road. So.
Right, yeah.
I know I look different in my suit, but I was the annoying sidewalk guy. I sent you all emails here.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, with these two options, I think safety
Use
is.
a microphone.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. just out of, safety is a big piece of it, but then at the same time, I think the whole point of this is to have a bus rapid transit route. And, we want to make sure that people are using it for its intended purpose. So, taking that into consideration, is there a preference at all right now, just thinking out loud? Or, I love this concept, but I think that'll really hit the whole purpose of the route. This concept here will really allow the bus to cruise the way it's intended to. So,
Yeah. Oh, is this? Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. So, we have to do all of our evaluation. If all things were the same and we could, we definitely would go for center running because that is the best for the bus. But we'll have to look. And, Craig was mentioning that where left turn lanes are and stuff, it could be that we need more property. For the most part in Maplewood, that's not as big of a problem as it is in St. Paul. So St. Paul, I think there's a lot more property impacts at some of the signalized intersections in order to make the traffic work. And so we'll have to see. St. Paul does not have a center running option. They only have side running options because the right-of-way is so tight there. But in Maplewood, there's potential that we could get going quickly and that it could be a very reliable service.
I think just to add on that, we need to look at different options because we're also going to have to redo the environmental process that was completed back in 2020 for the old alignment. So as part of that, it's not just one option you bring forward into the environmental process, but multiple options to weigh the pros and cons in all aspects. So we're looking at the community impacts and benefits. We're running ridership on all these scenarios because they have a little bit difference in runtime. As you would expect, the center running option is faster end to end and therefore is likely to generate more ridership than the side running options too. But the costs are also going to be slightly different between the options as well, particularly when we start getting into options that require more property. If everything else is essentially the same. And so those things will all be things we'll be able to share when we do the spring engagement. We'll have all that information.
Why don't we go back? Are you done with the map? We'll go back up to our seats, and then we can ask some additional questions.
Yeah, I can do the north end. There we go. Team ready. Questions away. Madam Mayor, City Council members, I think we're doing pretty good on time. My understanding is we got to be done by 7. We've only got less than a handful of slides for that segment 5, but before we get to that, the team and I will entertain any questions or comments you might have on what you just saw in segments 3 and 4. So, Madam Mayor, City Council members, we've been working with city staff, our internal departments, since we already have a major transit facility up in the North End District. We've also been working very closely with mHealth Fairview. I've met with them multiple times. So we started this process. We indicated to the Corridor Management Committee, I think back in June, that we were focusing our energies on segments 1 and 2 in St. Paul and 3 and 4 in Maplewood, while basically slow pedaling segment 5 because we needed to have more conversations with mHealth Fairview and city staff. And so over the course of that period of time, we looked at just shy of 10 different options, I think, represented by these various different colored lines. Different ways to potentially circulate a bus now that it wasn't going north up to Vadnais Heights and downtown White Bear Lake. We looked at options that were suggested by the hospital, including that red line that runs a new roadway along the backside of their property. They suggested that during one of our meetings, so we actually produced an engineering drawing for that to understand what kind of right-of-way they would be giving us for that. So we ended up narrowing down, after lots of conversation, some analysis, down to 2 options that we're carrying forward now at this time out of the 10. So the first option we're continuing to carry forward is what we're referring to as Hazelwood Street at St. John's Boulevard, essentially a station at that location, at that intersection. And that is the location that's been planned for a Purple Line station since the locally preferred alternative in 2017, because the alignment followed this same track all the way up Hazelwood and then crossed over on a new bridge on 694, over 694. And the difference here is we're not going north across the freeway. Instead, we need to figure out how to end the line. So what we would do is we would, after making that last stop at that station, we'd continue on up to County Road D and utilize county property and city property up there to be able to put a small bus turnaround in, a driver restroom facility, and then possibly a station platform. What we found is when we've had instances like this throughout the system where we have an end of the line that makes sense, like a hospital, and then, but we need to still be able to turn the bus around and lay it over, and we can't do it at that station location. Wherever we end up doing that, people see the bus just sitting there and they want to board it. So the thought is we would probably stick in some sort of platform there. Maybe it's not a full-fledged BRT platform, but it's some sort of facility for the passengers. This option would also include, because we're ending up there on D, we're not going into the Maplewood Transit Center with all the other buses. Rather, we would build a new station for Purple Line out on Beam Avenue and then connect it so that folks can make their transfer to those other bus services at the transit center. A lot of that has to be, oh, go ahead.
I was just wondering about what you just said about the laying over the buses. If all the buses lay over at the mall right now currently, and the last station is going to be St. John's, can you just clarify why they can't lay over? Why would we have to build a whole nother spot for them to do that?
Madam Mayor and Council Member, it's a good question. And so a lot of what we're looking at is the non-revenue service. So essentially once that bus ends at St. John's and Hazelwood, it's going into non-revenue service and circulating it through the additional time, because we did look at one loop that actually would carry another station on County Road D and then counterclockwise make its way back to the transit center. And some of those lines on the previous map had a bunch of different loops that did end us at the transit center. But after talking to our service development planners, as well as our engineering facility maintenance folks, this would be the most straightforward and most cost-effective operation to have from a transit operation standpoint.
I just have a follow-up question, please. So would any of the customers be able to go to that last spot? Or would it just be for the buses?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember, we're still in conversations. It actually came up in conversation internally here in the last week that if we were to do this, that platform I had mentioned, our experience has been people will want to try to get on the bus, and we might as well make it available for them. And so we would plan to build some sort of facility there for passengers to wait at. And actually, it's probably less waiting. If the bus is sitting there, they would actually just simply get on. The bus could be laying over at least 7 minutes long. For a layover, it could be closer to 20, depending on the cycle lengths of the bus route.
Can you tell me the new proposed station that you're considering? What is there currently today?
Madam Mayor, the new Beam Avenue station? Mm-hmm. So it would look like all the other platforms that we just walked through on the roll plot. So it would be, what we don't have for you today is roll plots of this segment, because we've just gotten down to these 2 options. So we're trying to figure out how would Purple Line operate on Beam Avenue? Would it be side running, center running, something different? And that's not what we have yet available to share. But we would, if it's side running, I'll just use as an example because you saw side running on segments 3 and 4, they would be platforms that are on the outside of the roadway. And so that's what we would end up having at the intersection of Beam and South Lawn.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Oh, going the wrong way. The other option that we're advancing forward for continued evaluation is ending the Purple Line at the transit center and providing a local connected route that doesn't exist today to serve the hospital and other areas. This would, we're calling it the 223, which used to exist, but this would not be the 223 that used to exist. The 223 back in its heyday was at best 90-minute service, which was honestly not that great of transit service when it's a trip every hour and a half. It's hard to plan around that. This would be a new, better version of that. One of the things that we heard in multiple conversations with mHealth is they did a good job over the course of interacting with them of articulating what they saw as their transit need versus dictating to us how to solve that need. And what we heard from them was they want 30-minute service. They think that's what they need to serve and their 2,800 workers. And one of the things that we're doing right now is, with their help, we have administered a survey to their 2,800 workers at the hospital. We're closing that survey on Monday the 18th. And then the other piece, which was shocking, and this is why we engage with the project partners and the stakeholders. We learn things that we don't know because we don't necessarily live or work in these communities. We found out that mHealth Fairview sponsors some of the college programming up at Century College that requires in-classroom training and on-hospital training. And they have been struggling with even the 220 or 219 coming back. 219 stops at the Maplewood Mall Transit Center. So those students are having to walk over to the hospital campus. It's winter time. So what they wanted was a direct connection from the hospital to Century College. And we believe the 223 option could potentially do that. We know both Century College would appreciate that and mHealth Fairview. It would help them for their partnership that they have with training future workforce. So those are the two options.
Councilmember Juniman has a question.
Sorry, those 2,800 workers, is that the current population? Because now the hospital just announced an expansion program.
Madam Mayor, City Council member, yes, 2,800 is what they have there today that they've provided us zip code information on. They've told us their expansion represents about a 10% increase in activity is what they've told us, whether that's customer activity or employee or both. We didn't get into those details.
Thank you.
That's all we had for you tonight, unless you've got further questions.
There certainly are a lot of moving pieces, aren't there? And I'm glad that we're going through this process. It's going to be very important for the whole East Side region. Councilmember Cave.
Just one question on the Century College part, because I think that was taken out last time, wasn't it? So then it was nixed, and now it's kind of being brought back in. Is that kind of...
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Cave, so what we have mentioned as part of this process, what we learned from last year when we were just simply truncating the line, that we only had a federally viable project to the Maplewood Mall Transit Center. There were reasons that the things didn't pencil out for either the Vadnais Heights or Century College option.
Okay.
Now we're in a different corridor,
Okay.
a mile to the east.
Okay.
Might be different. We don't have ridership numbers yet. We don't have cost numbers yet, which will drive, not 100%, but will definitely drive federal viability.
Okay.
And so we're starting with the premise that we're trying to get to the Maplewood Mall Transit Center where we ended last phase on.
Yep.
And if that looks promising, then we can explore, if folks want us to explore a potential direct connection to either Vadnais Heights or Century College.
Yeah, I think the Century College piece is wonderful, you know?
I'm very encouraged to see that that's back in the mix and up for discussion. Councilmember Villavicencio.
I believe I heard in the earlier part of the presentation that the conversation around the emergency services and maintenance coordination conversation hasn't really happened yet. So I was just wondering who that conversation is with, and when can we get an update about that? Because I'm very concerned about that.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember, so as was mentioned by Sarah, we interact with emergency services on many of our projects, so we have an understanding of how their operations work, but we need to have specific conversations related to these concepts in this corridor. And we are planning on doing that. Normally, we would do that when we're actually doing design, and we're kind of early for that, but we know that we're talking about something very different than what's out there today. And so down in St. Paul, it's been a little more acute because on Maryland, there's a fire station that fronts Maryland Avenue. So we need to ensure that they can get their vehicles in and out based off the designs that conceptually we have developed. So we'll be working with city staff in both cases, as well as county staff as necessary to make sure we're touching the right departments so that folks have an opportunity to weigh in to these. And we'll be doing that in the early part of next year.
Councilmember Lee has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you just give us a rough timeline of what's going on this coming year, so that way folks at home who are listening, who are interested in this, knows what's going on? And in addition to that, too, ridership is something that I'm very interested in and curious about. I'm sure the community is too. You know, what does that look like? When will you have that number out for us? So I'd love to hear just a timeline from you.
Yeah. Madam Mayor, Council Member, so our general timeline, we're still holding to, which is what we've been saying now for a number of months, trying to get a decision on a revised locally preferred alternative, Bruce Vento Trail Corridor, White Bear Avenue, by a little bit after Labor Day of next year. And working our way back from that, we've had some adjustments in schedule. What we need to be able to do is be able to tell the story to engage the public. If we just show them these pretty maps that we showed you here today and can't speak to property impacts and traffic diversion and pedestrian safety aspects and all the other things that we're doing as part of the evaluation process, we're not going to get meaningful feedback from them on the different options, the trade-offs between them. It's taken us a little longer to work through all of that, and so instead of a midwinter engagement, we're looking at more of a spring engagement with the public, most likely in that March, April timeframe. Which was the time frame we were hoping to get to a preferred concept for White Bear Avenue, and I would say that's now more in the May time frame. It's all a function of how quickly we can process through things. Traffic, there's been a longer discussion on traffic and these layouts here. We ended up spending about 8 workshops, I think, between the two cities over about a month and a half, and we thought we could do it in half that time and half that number of workshops. So we're going to take as much time as we need to get it right. And so if that means we have to push our schedule, we'll push our schedule. But right now we're looking at public comment, 30-day public comment period that'll have a bunch of different means, everything from the traditional open houses to other ways of engaging. Over specifically in Maplewood, these two options you see in front of you, refined with all the technical information. And that would be in that March, April timeframe. And that would then be brought forward to the Corridor Management Committee that will come forward with a staff recommendation based off the technical evaluation and what we hear from the public. And we'll propose that to the Corridor Management Committee, and they'll take action in about the May timeframe. And then we would come back probably the meeting after that with a refreshed Bruce Vento Trail Corridor. It is still the project of record. Granted, we've been focusing all of our time and attention on this, but we'll have to refresh ridership, so it's post-COVID. And that's one of the big things you're going to see with the new alignment. Will be all 100% post-COVID. We now have all the technical inputs to be able to do that. And then we'll also refresh the cost estimates as well. And so we'll bring that a month back, and then we'll spend the summer engaging the public over the two corridors to get to that Labor Day.
One more question?
Quick follow-up. You mentioned post-COVID. What is the definition from the Met Council in terms of what is considered post-COVID? Like, when could we consider that?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, so one, the feds have been continually updating their federal ridership model that we have to use, and the Met Council did a travel behavior survey back in 2022. Those results are now available to us. Those results were not available last year, so that's one of the main tools of calibrating the model to a post-COVID era to reflect how travel is occurring now, not before COVID.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions. Thank you for your presentation and your time.
Thank you.
We look forward. When do you think you're going to be back to talk to us again?
We would like to come back in a workshop format to walk through the preferred concept when we have that. So be able to share with you what our proposed concept is before it goes to the Corridor Management Committee in May. So probably sometime in late April, we'd like to come back, and then we'd be able to share the technical evaluations as well as what we heard from the public for that 30-day public comment period.
We'll look forward to hearing from you then in late April.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Council members, we have gone through our agenda for tonight.